Good morning, my renegades. Welcome back to Rogue Radio, and today is another thing of Renegade Times, but it's got a twist. There's only going to be one segment on here, because I told you a long time ago, I don't know, how long was it, like a few episodes ago, that Persecution Press is no longer around. I will be doing something new with World News later on to replace that, but as far as it being the source of Voice of the Martyrs, I'm not going to use Voice of the Martyrs as a reliable source anymore, and I'll talk to you guys about that later if you have not listened to that episode. But yes, jump into the trenches with me, because this is some evidence that I have found that actually has been given to me, and I want to share it with y'all. Alright.
Welcome back to Renegade Times. Jump in the shit's about to get real. This is where listening goes off the grid. Let's get into some trouble.
So to tell you all the full story, Voice of the Martyrs is or was one of the main sources that I used in order to give you guys some content about Christian persecution overseas. I loved that magazine. I'm still getting that magazine in the mail. I'm not sure how to unsubscribe to it. I'm gonna have to go to their website and find out. But basically, it just informs people about Christian persecution overseas and all of that. Their executive director back in the day was a man called Tim White. So, Tim White was accused of being a pedophile, and he had gone to trial and everything. But before he was actually deemed guilty or ruled as guilty, he had committed suicide. And because of that, or during that time, the founder of Voice of the Martyrs, Richars Wurmbrand, had a son, basically. His son basically was like, we need to, go ahead and do an investigation on Tim White just to make sure that he really isn't a pedophile, just to make sure and everything like that. And Micheal Wurmbrand ended up getting fired from his father's own company because his father at that time died. I want to say he died he died before all of this happened. And so Micheal Wurmbrand took over the company because he ended up being the co-founder of Voice of the Martyrs. And they fired him because all he wanted was an investigation on Tim White. And so when I found this out, it was the very last episode of Persecution Press, and I ended up making it the Pedophiles just because of how corrupt this company is. And so, we're gonna get into it. I did reach out to Micheal Wurmbrand in an email, and because of that, I honestly didn't think that he was ever going to email me back, but he did, and he gave me so much information. So, I did invite him onto Rogue Radio at some point if he is able to go ahead and do that. But until now, we're going to read the letter that he's given me, because he has given me permission to go ahead and let everyone know about Voice of the Martyrs. So here we go. Hello, my renegades. You want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily. Yes. And distribute it everywhere and earn money from it. All in one place for free. And it's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup looks like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&A poll, best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, it has been a few years now being Rogue Radio. I have reached over 67 countries and counting, and I'm very thankful for it. So how about we just have some fun, renegades, and go make your own podcast. Let your voice be heard. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to click the links down in the description below, and those are the links on how to reach me. There's also some merch that'll make you look sexy and get a date, so go ahead and get yourself some merch too. Love you. So the letter starts out to him replying, I will take the time to consider your information, so please confirm this email that you received and stuff like that. So he does say, thanks for taking the time to write to me. Unfortunately, the unbiblical behavior of Voice of the Martyrs got worse and not better. The greed for money is the root of all evil. My parents' books have been read in English by more than 10 million persons. When Tom White committed suicide and the deceptions I wrote about and documented occurred, many Christians, having heard or known our family, encouraged me in many ways to bring light these matters and write to as many fellow believers as possible. I am not able to send my letter to the hundreds of thousands of addresses of well-meaning but naive Christians who heard of our family, who are misled by the use of my parents' names. I am personally very sad for the betrayal of my trust and the use of my family Wurmbrand. Sad history of persecution by people hungry for money. The Bible asks us to weep with those who weep when someone weeps out of serious loss. Such wailing and crying is not done in a polite, low voice way. Intended or not, it mightily reaches, alarms, and disturbs many of those around. Genuinely crying is never convenient. Wow. So, at this point, Voice of the Martyrs is illegally using the Wurmbrand name in order to promote books and a whole lot of other things that Micheal Wurmbrand has refused to be a part of. But since he had gotten fired, there's not much he can do, because I don't know what they've done legally in order to keep the Wurmbrand name tied to Voice of the Martyrs. But I'm really sad. I'm really sad for him. They took his parents' name and just decided to still use it even though the company is corrupted. I wish there was something legally that he could do. He probably can. I definitely would look into it. I'm pretty sure he is too, but it's not okay to me for someone to do something like that. But it is very easy to find out if my crying is genuine. And imagine you try to buy a gold bar. If you scratch at one corner, some lead comes out. Would you still be keen buying that gold bar? No. You're right. Once a Christian organization starts half-truths, white lies, and misrepresentations, a suicide by its chairman within hours of a formal complaint of a suspected child molestation, and not answering my request of an immediate independent investigation, how could it be trusted? Exactly. That's fishy. That's real fishy. An organization that diverts over $28 million raised describing the sufferings of widows and orphans to finance. I am in the middle of waking up. I just knew I had to do something today because it's my day off. I just wanted to do something today. But an organization that diverts over $28 million raised describing the sufferings of widows and orphans to finance lavishly a local construction industry to go from a building costing initially $90,000 directly to one costing $28 million without the donors being repeatedly warned that their sacrificial giving goes to finance wood beams and mortar to build opulent quarters, or loans that proceeds of donations to a third-degree felon embezzler to make him sooner escape parole. How could it be trusted? Under secular laws, it might be legal from the point of Christian ethics, is stealing from the mouths of widows and orphans, many of whom live in less than $50 a month. They are plain impatient, thinking their in-your-face approach will shut me off. So he knows a lot of what's going on right now in Voice of the Martyrs. I did see the picture on his website of how the warehouse used to look and how it looks now. It is very lavishly done. It is nuts at the fact that they would take donations and use it for their own gain. It's not unheard of. We do know that Benny Hinn and a whole bunch of other televangelists do the same. But it's interesting because televangelists are usually like the face of their ministry. Voice of the Martyrs technically does have a face, but that face is deceased. Richard Wurmbrand is deceased. They're still using a dead man's name in order to get money. And that's what his son, Micheal, is trying to convey. Like, this company is corrupt to the point where they're a ministry, but it's almost like they're working like a televangelism ministry. But there's no television, there's just magazines. It's basically like propaganda. And they're using his father's name in order to do these corrupt things. For Voice of the Martyrs directors, using a known public advocate of lesbian marriages and a call-in writing to public sex to portray my mother in a movie made without my knowledge or permission is really over the top or in impertinence. So, Voice of the Martyrs does create movies sometimes, and I actually wanted to watch it so bad because it was about Richard Wurmbrand's wife Sabina and her life. But Micheal at this point is very upset at the fact that they used someone who is I think he said that she was a Romanian actor who promotes like lesbian marriages and talks about like public sex and stuff like that. So he doesn't believe that they should have used that actress in order to convey his own mother, because his own mother probably would definitely be against that. And also, they did it without his knowledge because, to be honest, he is still the co-founder of Voice of the Martyrs. He should have known this. But I caught them with gross misrepresentations. They lied to me to my face before I asked for a full meeting of the board, where they listened to me in silence. The Voice of the Martyrs directors lost their voice. Therefore, I wrote a letter given to each one in hand, and I am still waiting for an answer now 7 years later. It's crazy. This wise Solomon wrote, "Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation." I'm so sorry. Wise Solomon wrote, "Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So doth little folly him that is reputation for wisdom and honor." Ecclesiastes 10:1. Solomon writes, "A little folly in case of Voice of the Martyrs or a lot of other nefarious activities or big follies come to light." Okay. Let's see. Like the suicide of the chairman, Tom White, only within 2 to 3 hours after the parents of the 10-year-old girl made a formal complaint to the local police department of suspected sexual molestation of the girl, while the chief of police sat on the board of Voice of the Martyrs. The chief of police sat on the board of the Voice of the Martyrs. What in the world? One suicidal leader who made over $142,000 a year, plus very frequent paid jaunts around the globe. The investigation was promptly closed within a few days by the police since the suspected perpetrator was dead. All I demanded from him, or from the board, was to use my father's name for fundraising without a proper independent, or to not use his father's name without a proper independent investigation, not of that girl, but of White's trips around the globe in the past 2 years before his death, to lay rest any further suspicions. And that is actually just a very natural reaction to something terrible like this. You do want to naturally go ahead and find out if Tom White ended up molesting other children in other countries. You would want to investigate and make sure that those accusations are true. Because it kind of reminds me of Richard Huckle, one of the guys that I actually did cover on the pedophiles. He actually would go to the Philippines and molest children and kind of like befriend the family, teaching them English and teaching them all this stuff, but then he would use the pictures and the videos that he ended up victimizing these kids, and he ended up like putting it all over the internet. And we don't know if Tom White ended up doing that when he ended up going on mission trips and helping orphans and helping children and helping widows and all of that stuff. We don't know that. So I understand Micheal Wurmbrand's concern when it comes to, is he doing this more than just here where he lives with this just one girl? Because if I know anything about pedophilia, is that it evolves. Crime evolves. It's never just one child, especially if it is a prolonged, lifelong thing that ends up happening. Pedophilia doesn't usually always victimize one child. It's always multiple children. So what was he doing on his trips? That is a very plausible suspicion. That is a very what's the word? It's just a very natural suspicion. It's not out there. It is very natural for him to have the suspicion. And, you know, I would be right there with them. Like, can we go ahead and investigate his behavior and make sure that everything's alright? Maybe this was a one-time thing that he did feel bad about and killed himself. We don't know at this point. But the loaning of tens of thousands of dollars of donors and missionary money to a third world degree felon sentenced to 10 years of prison to help him escape parole, even make him a member of the board to be able to justify such a loan, and then a humongous opulent of $28,000 in construction, a small provincial town with only 35,000 people in population, again built out of donors' gifts, who for years are misled to believe that the bulk of their money is destined to help out widows and orphans persecuted for their faith. We have a life flight coming in. It's gonna fly right over the complex that I live in. Where is it? It's very noisy out here. Paper cover it all, spending millions to make a theatrical movie of our own family. Wurmbrand, without my knowledge, has a total documented inheritor of all rights in the persona of my parents and of course mine, and with full knowledge, having an actress portray my mother, an actress well known in Romania. I documented as a public advocate for lesbian marriages and public group sex. Yeah, that's something that Wurmbrand, and Sabina would never really stand for at all. Published in the tens of thousands without me knowing, an alleged autobiographical book written by some ghostwriter, but presented as presented as coming from me, to impress children and parents in homeschooling environment, to become donors of Voice of the Martyrs. Okay. Everything above is documented if you read the wurmbrandmichael.com website. There I show a picture of the miserable refugee camp in the Philippines used by Voice of the Martyrs to raise money, contrasted to the $28 million building the Voice of the Martyrs headquarters. Built out of money donors led to believe their donations go to help widows and orphans held in such miserable conditions. It is simple to figure out where substantial donations did go. Indeed, a lot of folly for organization calling itself Christian. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, guys, I don't even like Christians. I am a Christian, technically. I just don't like Christians. They are fake. What is a Christian anymore? Back in the day, we used to just be followers of Christ, like people who would stand up for what is right in God's eyes and all that stuff. Now it's like the line between secular and Christian is starting to just be blurred out, and no one really knows what a real Christian is. So when I see Christians, like a Christian organization calling themselves Christian, you're not Christian, because look at what all look at all the corrupt crap that you're doing. Look at the stuff that you've been doing. You've been using a dead man's name without the approval of his son, because, to be honest, he still has his father's estate. And to be honest, I don't know what else his father did own besides Voice of the Martyrs. Voice of the Martyrs is probably a really big chunk of his estate. But he inherited his father's legacy. He was supposed to. And they took it from him. And that's heartbreaking. I can't imagine how Michael is feeling right now. But I was asked to keep quiet, not to disturb the flow of funds. I was offered in writing over $250,000 would I sign not to badmouth Voice of the Martyrs. They wanted him to sign an NDA. Oh, okay. I try to alert Christian donors to what I consider, because of misusing our family story of suffering, being misguided, a whiff of not independently investigated suspicion of child sexual child molestation, should make any committed Christian recoil in horror. How can money raised using dramatic suffering of persecuted widows and orphans making a living on hardly more of $50 be used to shamelessly finance the local construction industry in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, USA, to build a $28 million opulent headquarters? This is what ministries do now. They're like, oh, we're gonna go ahead and do this, instead of actually doing what we're supposed to with the money. And to be honest, even televangelists will tell you, I need a new jet, a new private jet, to go ahead and go on vacations and probably molest children. You know, at least they go ahead and say it to your face. Voice of the Martyrs didn't do that. Voice of the Martyrs decided, oh, well, orphans and widows need money in other countries, so we're going to go ahead and use that money to make a brand new building to make us seem more important. I mean, to be honest, televangelists will tell you the truth. Voice of the Martyrs is lying to you. Like, okay. The Bible requires us to resist the devil and his evil works. We cannot just stick around and hypothecate one way or another. Still, however, going public, I tried to reason with these directors at VOM, and all I got were dissimulating explanations and stonewalling. Yep. All I ask is for those inspired by our family and story of suffering to try and reach and donate for persecuted Christians, but not to donate to Voice of the Martyrs. Indeed, their magazine makes the impression of them doing a fantastic work in American advertising. There is a saying, in American advertising, there's a saying, paper is patient. Indeed, on paper, it is to make any kind of great impression. Therefore, the Gospel of John mentions the word truth more than 22 times. I am not another disgruntled employee. I am the founder of the organization, necessarily having more inside information than I could disclose publicly. By God's grace, I am 82 years old. Oh my God. Yes. Wow. He's 82. That's crazy. I mean, I speak life and just a long happy life for you, Michael, because it is nuts. I don't know. I'm very, how can I say this? My grandfather died when he was 83. And the fact that you're a year younger than him, I just speak life over you. Like, I really do. I speak life, a very long life, and I really hope that you will be able to find justice for your family name before you meet God, because that's something that you deserve, and I know that God knows that you deserve that as well. Not just you, but your family and the people that have donated blindly to this organization. But, by God's grace, I am 82 years old. I have been in mission work for more than 50 years. My persona was used by Voice of the Martyrs plenty to raise donations, and therefore I ask for an independent investigation. 4 days later, I received a letter of dismissal of canned paragraphs. How can I accept such a hoax advertising using the persona of my father and of my mother and even mine to support such an advertising hoax? Their invited speakers might make a good impression, yet there is the danger when the kids growing up or those attending the conferences find out that they were misled in the slightest way. They will reject not only the few paragraphs that misled them, but the entire Bible. You are absolutely right. When it comes to a Christian organization that is supposed to fuel the faith of a believer, once that trust has been betrayed, because of how much they invest on the faith of other people and the faith in God they express that everyone should have, when it comes to something like this coming out, it is very hard to even trust God, because I'll take my own experience real quick, just to give you guys an example. For the longest time in my life, I did hate God, and one of the reasons was because I lived basically in this church community that was all about how everything looked, did not see me as a complete human, I don't believe, and everything that I tried to do to move up into the ministry did not work, because there was always someone putting a stumbling block in front of me. And any time that I wanted to be a part of the worship band, I would not get a call back after my audition. I auditioned about maybe 5 times or 4 times. I wasn't about to try a 5th or 6th time. And at that time, I was just like, I'm just going to young adults class just because I know that I need to be around Christian people. And even that, I ended up finding people who were fake and people who actually meant harm to me. Certain people, not all people. And and I didn't understand why. And at that point, I just stopped going to like young adults ministry. And then at some point, when me and my husband met, we both stopped going to the church because he saw what was going on and how I've been treated, and he loved me so much that he's like, we're gonna leave. We don't need to be a part of this anymore. And so I'm sure there's other reasons why we decided to leave as well. It's not just me. But even after we left, we ended up being a part of a house ministry that I'm still a part of today. But I still have some push and pull with God when it comes to our relationship, because there are things not just in my church life, but even in my personal life that I still have to struggle with. And I'm still wondering why God let this happen. So it's not always about, like, when it comes to ministries, they blame God because of all these terrible things that happen. It also does happen when it comes to personal life as well. But according to Micheal, with people denying the whole Bible because they're being misled by a organization that is corrupt, I wholeheartedly agree with that, because it has been happening for so long. It's still happening right now. And that is one of the main reasons why so many people hate God, is because of ministries like Voice of the Martyrs. And the main people that are facilitating and perpetuating all of this and taking money from the people that really need it are one day going to have to answer to God. And I don't want to be one of those people. That would scare me to death. He goes on to say, every food that contains poison necessarily contains some tasty morsels, and this applies in the spiritual realms as well, and there is the great danger for our mind. It is normal for me it is normal for me trying to carry on the genuine missionary desire of my parents at helpforrefugees.com. Go ahead and visit helpforrefugees.com. If you want to donate, go right on ahead. I don't know if he takes donations or not, but if you want to, go ahead and do that, if he does provide that opportunity. But in the middle and the right columns inside our newsletter, Genuine Testimonies of Christians we helped, who passed through as many as 18 years of communist prisons. I try to warn well-intended Christians not to let themselves be misled. P.T. Barnum, one of the greatest showmen on earth, repeated many a time, there is a sucker born every minute. Sucker is a double meaning expression referring to a baby that is also well-intended naive person of whom someone might take advantage. How can I stop anyone willing to support any religious scheme? How could I stop anyone willing to support any religious scheme? So long as it is legal and appealing. Specifically regarding their present director Cole, he was personally deceptive to myself and continued so in the way he replied about me to persons who inquired about my letter. If you want, you may share this letter with anyone inquiring. As I wrote above, if anyone is keen on finding the documented truth of what I described above, they may read it at wurmbrandmichael.com. I have asked every person who contacted me to accept phone calls, or to not accept phone calls with Voice of the Martyrs on the phone. It is easy to mislead without any record. One should ask a reply in writing. I'm so sorry. I'm having trouble reading. In the last 7 years, to my knowledge, no one received a point-by-point reply. Everyone received only general evasive answers. Wow. Regarding legal rights. So I have registered legal rights to the use of my parents' persona, and of course to the use of my own persona, but few persons out of legal profession know how difficult it is to enforce such rights. It takes hundreds and thousands of dollars of court costs and many legal moves to enforce such rights. Most people do not understand that real court cases look very different from TV shows and lasting 1 hour like Judge Judy or Perry Mason. Voice of the Martyrs and has the gold gathered. Sorry. God. I'm annoyed by myself at the moment. Give me a second. Okay. Voice of the Martyrs has the gold gathered from the generous, naive donors who, with the help of the sad story of our family suffering, for some worldly Christians, the golden rule is, who has the gold makes the rule. Therefore, Voice of the Martyrs, having raised scores of millions using our family history of suffering, would rather pay themselves big to produce a movie in the hopes of getting more money. Most people also think that there should be no problem finding lawyers working in contingency, as it is in the case with the many personal injury cases. This is not feasible in the case of intellectual rights disputes. A lawyer working on contingency in such disputes would for sure go bankrupt before the case is even heard by the judge in a court. I am not a lawyer, but I do have 4 years studied in law degree. Have a long, successful experience with courts, not of my own making, and what I explained above you may verify with other law-savvy personas or persons. Alright. Rights that cannot be backed up with a lot of dollars are not true rights. That's nuts. Nobody would be moving a finger to defend such rights without substantial payments. The cost of legal work is unpredictable, as the party who has substantial money dictates the price. So basically he's saying he can't fight for his father's name because of money costs, I'm guessing. Because of the legal fees. And that's nuts. That's terrible. Voice of the Martyrs, in a way totally against Christian ethics, displays brazen impudence. If you want, you may share this email with anyone inquiring. As I wrote above, if someone is keen on finding the documented truth, they may read it at wurmbrandmichael.com. That's totally fine. Regarding to judge the work of a missionary organization, please consider as follows. It would be easy to judge the propriety of a missionary organization if contributors would ask simple questions. How many on the board of that organization speak any language spoken on the mission field, and how many of the directors are from those countries? How many spent even substantial time on the ground in those countries, other than first-class airplane jaunts or televisits by videos? Wow. So he's even saying that the mission work that they do is wrong. Like, it's not as they seem. It has become now very similar to medical insurance companies with states, or in the states, which are run by non-medics. Man, don't say that. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's true, but dang, we all need our medical, don't we? That's crazy. As to percentages and other financial statements my father used to repeat, the best written contract is the character of a person. You know what? Your father was a very wonderful and very strong man, and I will always have respect for your father because I have read his book, Tortured for Christ. I love the fact that I have learned a lot. I know a lot of the stuff that I have learned about your father is through Voice of the Martyrs. So, but I do have still a lot of respect for your father because he did suffer a lot. And his story does still live on to some degree. And yeah. Again, if you desire to support the ministry work, the missionary work, stated by our family of helping elderly Christians who suffered many years of communist imprisonment and orphans in Eastern Europe, you will find all details on helpforrefugees.com. There you will find a printed interview with me and also a different video interview I gave inside a former communist prison in Romania. You will find a donate button to send donations by credit or PayPal. I lead both nonprofit organizations with Richars Wurmbrand Foundation and Help for Refugees. God bless, Michael. So, like I said, I am very, very happy that he actually came out and reached out to me. I am honored, really. I am humbled. So, if he ends up giving me anything or anything new, if we do end up talking a little bit more and we do end up doing an interview on YouTube, if that's something that he chooses to do, I will definitely let you guys know, because I am not going to stop chasing this this piece of information, because this is nuts. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being patient with my reading. And I will see you guys in the trenches next time. See ya.